Well, good morning, everybody. It's Saturday morning and it's a holiday weekend, so of course, why would technology want to cooperate with us? In case you haven't been here before, welcome to Just Parlays with Chris King. I'm Chris King, of course, your host. I want to thank Michael Wolf for his help trying to get stuff set up with OBS, but of course, technology did not want to cooperate with me this morning. First it was the camera, then it was the stream didn't want to activate itself, and then when it did, it decided to close itself out, which is why we're working on the fly here, kind of. But hopefully everybody's had a good holiday weekend. Hopefully you had a good turkey day. Hopefully you made yourself some money betting on football or any of the 372,605 college basketball tournaments that have gone on over the weekend. And it's good to be back. I mean, we haven't been on in I think it's been about 5 weeks now. And hopefully this will be the start of getting back on track and getting back out there in front of all you guys. Like I said, I apologize for the difficulties. Good to see you, Jeffrey. Hopefully things are good with you. But I mean, let's talk about what's going on. It's rivalry week in college football, so we've got a lot of big games going on there. You got the Iron Bowl, of course, Alabama and Auburn. You've got other matchups all over the place. We'll see Notre Dame, USC tonight. Some lesser lights like Tennessee, Vanderbilt. Down here, of course, everybody talking about the Clemson, South Carolina matchup for no apparent reason because, let's face it, nobody really cares. You've got Kentucky and Louisville in a battle of teams that have been disappointing. So no matter where you go, I mean, you've got a lot of games to go on. You got the Apple Cup in Washington, of course, over in Pullman this year. They'll be playing Washington and Washington State. I know everybody's really excited about Georgia and Georgia Tech, right? Of course, there's the big game in Columbus at the Horseshoe tonight, or this afternoon. You've got number 3 Michigan and number 2 Ohio State. Blake Corum is going to attempt to play. When I hear the word attempt to play, it doesn't really inspire a ton of confidence. I don't think Corum can be Willis Reed and play, 5 minutes and have his team get motivated, because without him, that Michigan run game is not nearly as effective as it could be. So in that case, I'm leaning towards Ohio State. I didn't put them up on the card because I was waiting to see what the status was of Corum, but I like the Buckeyes in that game. They should win comfortably, especially playing at home. Jim Harbaugh got a win against Ohio State last year. Doesn't mean it's going to continue. Don't forget, you've got the Civil War in Oregon. That'll be a good matchup too. Oregon and Oregon State, both ranked teams. Oregon State's played pretty well for Jonathan Smith this season. You've got Purdue, Indiana. And then, you've got some other games that Kansas State, Kansas started well, then they kind of faded away. But hey, give Lance Leopold credit. That team is bowl eligible for the first time since Mark Mangino was there. And we all know how long ago that was. Going back to 2008, the last time Kansas has won more than, I think it was 3 or 4 games in a season. But we know why you're here. You're here because you want to talk about winners, and you want to talk about, finding ways to put money in your pocket. That's why we're here this early in the morning. We're going to start off with a 3-teamer. And I apologize that I don't have the graphics to go up because we had them going on OBS. And like I said, technology ate that. So I will go off the list and tell you who we had. You guys can write them down, or if I had a way to put them up, I would. Well, actually, I guess I could put them in the banners if I can figure out how to get those to actually create. There we go. I can do this. And I can run it across the bottom of the screen. So just bear with me 1 second while I get these inputted. Gonna look at my sheet here. And there we go. Yeah, a three-teamer I've got going today is I've got Penn State by 19 over Michigan State. Let's face it, Michigan State, Mel Tucker's team has been in complete disarray. I know they won a couple of games, but last week they gave up 39 points to an Indiana team that's not very good offensively by any stretch of the word. Penn State, they've won their last 3 games since that loss to Ohio State, and they've pretty much decimated the opposition in that stretch. You look and they blew out Indiana 45-14 on the road. Then they blanked Maryland 30-0, and they had that narrow margin of victory last week against Rutgers, winning by the score of 55-10. You look at Michigan State. Thorne hasn't been bad at quarterback, but they don't really have any big play guys. I know that they need a win here in order to become bowl eligible. I just don't see it. I mean, we just talked about how Michigan State had won 2 straight. They slipped by Rutgers by 6 at home, and we just said Penn State beat them 55-10 on the road. And you give up 39 points to Indiana. Michigan State has issues in the kicking game, too. You know, they missed a 22-yard field goal at the end of regulation that would have beaten the Hoosiers. They had another kick blocked in overtime. I get that sometimes you'll see Michigan State get up for games, like they beat Illinois and Champaign a few weeks ago. I just don't see it. Going to Penn State, Happy Valley, you know, the Nittany Lions have been playing good football. They've won 4 out of 5. They scored at least 30 points in each of their last 5 games, winning 4 of those. The one loss, of course, coming to Ohio State when the game ended 44-31. But this is a very good Penn State offense. They should have no problem lighting up Michigan State. Kansas. I mean, like we said, Kansas has played some good football early in the season, but they've been getting gouged by the run in recent weeks. That's something that we talked about with Steen and Reichel on the college show on Wednesday. You look at the recent games, and Kansas has been torched for 298, 273, 264, and 427 on the ground in 4 of their last 5 games. In their last 5 games, they have given up 19 touchdowns on the ground. The only game that they had that was good in that stretch, they held Oklahoma State to 110 yards on 35 carries. But the other games, 57 for 298 and 5 scores to Oklahoma, 57 for 273 and 4 scores against Baylor, 48 for 264 and 4 touchdowns against Texas Tech, and 57 carries for 427 yards and 6 touchdowns last week against Texas in a game where they lost 55-14. Game probably wasn't even that close. Now you've got to go to Manhattan. You've got to play Kansas State. Kansas State averaging better than 208 yards per game on the ground, 5.2 yards a carry. And this offense just looks better with Will Howard in there than it does with Adrian Martinez. You know, they ran for 269 against Texas a couple weeks ago. The last couple weeks have been quieter. They ran for 103 against Baylor in a 31-3 win. They ran for 153 last week. But, you know, you're looking at I'm sorry, wrong set of numbers there. They ran for 139, 184, and 143 the last 3 weeks. But early in the season, they had 4 of their first 5 games, they ran for at least 235. You know, Deuce Vaughn is a good running back. He's rushed for 1,148 yards. Martinez, if he gets in there, he's run for 615 and 10 touchdowns. DJ Giddens has been good. I just don't think Kansas, with the way their defense is played, is going to hold up here. And then we'll go to the ice there, and I like Vegas over Vancouver. We've talked a lot. Well, I've talked a lot with, you know, people that I talked to about how Vancouver has just been terrible when it comes to keeping the puck out of their own net. The Canucks, in the first 2 weeks of the season, blew multiple goal leads in 4 games, and they haven't gotten a whole lot better since. You take a look at what Vancouver's done. They come into this game 7-10-3. They did beat Colorado on Wednesday night. Of course, Colorado was missing roughly half their starting lineup there. They lost to Vegas 5-4 at home. Prior to that, Vegas is sparkling 16-5-1 on the season, which has been a nice start considering when you looked at the start of the year, you're like, Vegas, well, they don't have any goaltenders because Robin Leonard is hurt. And you're going with Logan Thompson and Laurent Brassard and all these guys. You're like, well, these guys are a bunch of scrubs. But, Vegas, they're 5th in the league in goals per game. They're 3rd in goals against. They play well in their own zone. They don't give up a lot of high danger chances. Vancouver, sure, they score a lot because they're tied for 7th in the league in goals per game, but you look defensively, and Vancouver, 3rd worst in the league, giving up 3.90 goals per game. It's not going to get it done. Thatcher Demko hasn't gotten a whole lot of help in his own end of the ice, which is disappointing because, Demko was a big reason why Vancouver made that push down the stretch last year. They didn't make the playoffs, but they had an opportunity to do so, but let it slip away. All right. Now, one of the fun parts about the show, too, today is that we're going to give you one of the 4-teamers that I actually have going with as part of my premiums, which, of course, are available on the Winners and Winers website. You can go to the experts.winnersandwiners.com, or I believe we have a link right at the top of the site that'll take you to all those. You can get big deals right now with it being, the holiday weekend. Big discounts are available for my picks or Scott Steen's or everybody else that's the experts at Winners and Winers. So go over there and take advantage. I'm just going to punch up this into the banner there so it's there. So just bear with me for a second. Improvising on the fly is what we're doing here, since I had all kinds of technical issues where I didn't want to cooperate this morning. So hopefully this will function. StreamYard I'm a little more familiar with than OBS, so it makes it a little bit easier. But we had to call the audible on the fly there to get it to get the switch over. So I apologize for all the delays. Bear with me here. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay. The 4-teamer that I have that's going out, well, one of the 4-teamers, because I have multiple ones that go out every day. I'm going to start with LSU over Texas A&M. Can anybody tell me a more disappointing team this season than Texas A&M? You're talking about a team that everybody was hyped up about when the season started. Jimbo Fisher and all that other stuff. And of course, what are they? They're 4-7. They're not going to a bowl game. They're 1-6 in the SEC. They're just 107th in the nation in scoring offense at 21.7 points a game, or 21.4 points. I'm sorry. They struggled last week to beat UMass. The fun part was they were favored by 33 points, I think it was. And as Rachel pointed out last week on the college show, Texas A&M hasn't scored 33 points in a game all season. They ended up winning 20-3 over UMass. Now they got to face LSU. LSU, of course, is in line to try and push into the CFP. They're ranked number 5 in the country right now in the CFP rankings. And, a good win here would keep them in line to, they'll face Georgia, of course, in the SEC title game. And let's face it, Texas A&M, I think they basically quit on the season. They've done nothing of late. You look, they gave up they only gave up 3 points last week, but they lost to Auburn, and we know what a train wreck Auburn's been. And I get it. They've got a lot of close losses. They lost by 3 at home to App State back in the second week of the season. They lost by 4 to Alabama. They lost by 6 to South Carolina. They lost by 3 to Ole Miss. They lost by 3 to Auburn. But you know what? Good teams win close games. And if you don't, then you're 4-7 and not going to a bowl game. There's a lot of issues with A&M on and off the field. Now you've got to face an LSU team that's pretty good when it comes to throwing the ball when they have to. They run the ball well. They average 192.7 yards a game on the ground. Texas A&M is giving up 210.8 yards a game in the run game. Jaden Daniels should be running the ball a lot himself. Josh Williams should get the ball. Emory Jr. should get the ball. Basically, anybody that's a running back or has a skill position player for LSU should be able to run all over the place here. They might not have to throw the ball a ton. I like LSU to win this one fairly big over a Texas A&M team that's basically given up on the year. Good to see you, T-Train. Hey, Matt, AJ's. Good to see you. Hopefully, you had a good time watching the game on Thursday. And, of course, hopefully, not just from the perspective of being a Bills fan, but, I have to think, just from a football perspective in general, hopefully, Von Miller returns sooner rather than later. You see the ongoing chant about, get rid of turf. And, to some extent, they're right. I mean, turf is its own mess. T-Train says he loves LSU today, making just 2 plays, LSU and Middle Tennessee State. I like Middle Tennessee State. They should have no problem thrashing Florida International. The Golden Panthers, not very good. They just got thrashed last week in a game where they had less than 100 yards of offense against a UTEP team that nobody thinks is great. Meanwhile, Middle Tennessee State, Chase Cunningham threw for 448 yards or something like that, a career high against Florida Atlantic. Florida International just wants to get the season over with. I don't think they'll have much of a shot there. So I think Middle Tennessee probably wins by, 4 or 5 touchdowns. And enjoying the Ohio State-Michigan game, but holding myself back from playing the over. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially, like I said at the top, if Corum is limited and or does not play at all. Because he's the straw that stirs the drink that is the Michigan offense. Other than LSU, who else we have on here? We've got Utah and Colorado. Now, if you watch the college show over the week or earlier in the week when we were talking about Colorado, how can we put this mildly? Colorado sucks. You look at the Buffaloes, they have a win. So kudos. But they have no quarterback. They have no run game. They have no receivers, and they don't really play defense. They've got the 5th worst scoring offense in the nation at 14.9 points a game. If that wasn't bad enough, they're dead last in scoring defense. That's right. They're worse than UMass. They're worse than New Mexico State. They're worse than New Mexico. They're worse than UConn. They're just horrible. 5 straight games where Colorado has given up at least 40 points. They give up 42 to Oregon State. They give up 42 to Arizona State. They give up 49 to Oregon. They give up 55 to USC in a game that was, 3-2 at the end of the first quarter, and Colorado actually was leading. Then they gave up 53 in the final three quarters. And they gave up 54 last week to Washington in a game where it was 54-7, and sadly the final didn't even indicate how much of a blowout that game was because they were outgained 575 to 202 in total offense. Now you got to play a Utah team that's aggravated that they lost last week to Oregon in a game where Bo Nix might not, or was talking about that he might not play his game time decision. Then he played and they ended up winning. Oregon won by 3. Kyle Whittingham's team going to be pissed off. You look at the games where Colorado has played decent teams. They lost 38-13 in their opener to TCU. That's because Max Duggan was not the starter in the opener. It was Chandler Morris. He came in after Morris got hurt. They were beaten 45-17 by UCLA. And like we said, 49-10 by Oregon, 55-17 by Southern Cal, 54-7 by Washington. 29.5 points is a lot until you look and see that Colorado is getting outscored by an average of 27.9 points all season, and that includes games against teams like Air Force. They lost to Arizona by 23. They lost to Minnesota by 42, and their one win came by 7 points over Cal. Last I checked, Cal not a football power. They're just 4-8. Colorado will get obliterated in that contest once again. We got Iowa State TCU. I'm going to go with under 47.5 points. It's going to be a low-scoring game there. Iowa State, for all their issues on the offensive side of the ball, they play some pretty good defense. You look and Cyclones, 8th in the country. They give up just 16.5 points a game, which helps since they're in their 110th in offense. But, they'll grind the game out. They're not going to overwhelm you. They don't give up a lot of big plays. Losing Jarrell Brock takes away their best running back. So now you're down to Deion Silas and Cartevious Norton and Eli Sanders. And, I guess Hunter Deckers will try to run, but seeing how he averages less than a yard a carry, not really a threat there. But Iowa State's defense will keep them in the game. You look and these Cyclones have given up just 30 or more than 30 points just once, and that was in a loss to Baylor back in September. Meanwhile, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opponents have scored 14 or less against Iowa State this season. I'm not saying TCU is going to be held to 14, but we saw them have to grind out a 17-10 win over Texas a couple weeks ago. And they've got some guys that are banged up. Kendra Miller's banged up. Johnson is banged up. And, they were fortunate last week that they slipped by Baylor, with the scramble drill to set up the field goal. I think TCU wins the game because, like T-Train said, they've got a lot at stake here. If they want to try and hang on to that spot in the CFP, they've got to win here and they've got to win the Big 12 title game, be it against Kansas State or Texas or whoever ends up in there. And I think it'll be K-State since I already backed K-State to beat Kansas. But, Johnston is banged up. So you're talking about your top running back and your big play receiver are both banged up. I'm not saying they're going to miss the game. Yeah, AJ said he liked the Buffalo, but he can't bet the UB Bulls. Yeah, that's true because where he is. Good to see you, buddies. Good. Hope things are good over there in the Delta. Hopefully, one of these days you won't send Steen ribs. Good to see you, JR. And Sion, I will get to the 10-teamer. I'm not going to just rush through things because that's not how we do it. Never has, never will. Finally, in the 4-teamer, Washington over Washington State in the Apple Cup. Caleb DeBauer's done a great job with that team. I think you look at this team, you look at Washington and what they've done. They struggled with Chris Peterson there. They struggled with Jimmy Lake. DeBauer has gotten this team motivated. Michael Penix leads the nation in passing offense. You look at this and you think that all of a sudden Washington was, Washington State when Mike Leach was there. And now Washington State's more of a balanced offense of sorts. I know playing in Pullman is tough, but, you're looking at a Washington team that has been very good offensively. Both teams good on defense, but I think Washington State's edge on the offensive side of the ball is enough to get them the win here and regain the Apple Cup after they were trounced in Seattle last season. I'm going to go with the Huskies over the Cougars. What's up with the Bills? Well, I mean, just to talk about that real quick, look at all the injuries. Now you played without Russo, you played without Terrell or Jermaine Edmonds the other day. Trey White finally played for the first time all season. Now Miller's hurt. Deion Dawkins left. Hyde's been out for an eternity. Injuries are the great equalizer in sports. And like they say, on any given Sunday, anybody can beat anybody. Let me ask you a question, T-Train. Did Hunter Henry complete the catch and score, or did he not maintain possession? Because I know how Henry's saying, I caught the ball. That was part of the difference in the contest the other day against Minnesota. It's going to be an interesting game because, Belichick's familiar with what Buffalo does, and they're familiar with what New England does. It'll depend on what you get from Mac Jones and whether Damian Harris is hurt to the point where he can't play or not. I know Stevenson's basically supplanted him as the number one back there, but still. It's good to have two backs as opposed to only having one. Now, give me 1 second while I punch in the 10-teamer, which is going to cover stuff from today and some of the NFL games from tomorrow, because when we did these yesterday, most of the college games did not have – most of the college basketball games, I should say, didn't have lines, which, of course, made it difficult to put them in because we set these up early so Michael could do the graphics. And then, of course, like I said, we had issues where they didn't want to load. So give me 1 minute to punch this through. I might have to break it up into two slides or two tickers because otherwise it'll be too long. Or no, maybe not. Maybe it'll fit since I'm trimming out all the excess stuff. But yeah, we've got some NFL in here for tomorrow, along with some of the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Yeah, so there we go. Shot in the dark coming up here. Talk about some of the games. Like I said, some are today, some are tomorrow, so it carries over. Yeah, I saw Des freak out. He freaks out all the time. Des Bryant freaks out about everything just because, I'll never forget that play against Green Bay. Justin says Clemson and Ohio State both win big today. Yeah, Ohio State will win comfortably, I think. Clemson, South Carolina played their best game of the year last week against Tennessee. I don't see them building off that. Spencer Rattler used a bunch of Madden cheat codes to boost his rating. I think I'll probably come back to earth today. Okay, going to start with BYU minus 6.5. Has anybody seen a more disappointing team than Stanford? I guess the only good thing you can say about them is at least they didn't play Colorado this year. That game would have been horrible to watch. I'm surprised David Shaw hasn't been fired. I know injuries have taken a toll on them. They lost E.J. Smith very early in the season. Filkins has been banged up here and there. I mean, they got a converted safety playing running back at times in Ligber, and that's not overly impressive. Tanner McKee hasn't been great, and I know that BYU's had their struggles, but come on, Stanford is 3-8. They're 108th in scoring offense, or 113th in scoring defense. BYU should have no problem going and beating a team that's lost 4 in a row. Stanford's 2 wins against FBS opponents, a 2-point win at Notre Dame, followed by a 1-point win against Arizona State. Their other win was over Colgate. And even in that game, they turned the ball over 4 times. Stanford has committed 22 turnovers. They have just 11 takeaways. BYU should take advantage of that and pick up an easy win. TJ talking about Michigan, talking about how Harbaugh chokes often in games of this magnitude, and that's accurate. He sucks when it comes to big games. Elsewhere in the Shot in the Dark, Wake Forest -3.5 over Duke. I've had problems with Wake Forest at times because, they were playing well, and then everybody remember the Louisville game where they turned it over 8 times? They turned it over 6 times in a quarter. After that, I kind of got a little bit irritated with Wake Forest. Then they lost to NC State. But they got back on the horse last week. They beat Syracuse. They didn't turn it over for the first time in 5 games. And that was the big thing, because if you look in the first 6 games of the season, Wake Forest turned it over 3 times. They were 5-1. Then the next 4 games, they were 1-3, but they turned it over 14 times. Then they won last week with no turnovers. I like Sam Hartman. He's a very good quarterback. And, Duke's a feisty team. Riley Leonard nearly led them back against Pitt last week. They lost by 2. Couldn't get the 2-point conversion in the final minute. But I like Wake Forest. I like the fact that, they're a little more of a veteran team than Duke at this point. It's going to be a good game. I just think Wake Forest has the experience to pull it out late. After that, we've got Pitt over Miami. Boy, you talk about teams that quit. We talked about Stanford. Miami is another team that basically quit on the season a long time ago. They could use a win to get to bowl eligibility, but can you really trust a team that's, played 3 quarterbacks? They got trounced by Florida State a couple weeks ago, 45-3. They got trounced by Clemson last week, 40-10. They haven't had more than 136 passing yards in any of the last 4 games. They had that awesome game against Virginia, if you like not scoring, when the game ended up 14-12 in, quadruple overtime? In a game where nobody found the end zone. Pitt, if there's a more overrated quarterback than Keaton Slovis, I haven't met him yet. But, the Panthers, give them credit, they're 7-4. Slovis hasn't been great, but Abanaconda has been excellent running the ball. 1,320 yards, 18 touchdowns. He should be able to run through a Miami team that's, basically quit. They gave 201 on the ground last week. They gave 229 to Florida State. They gave 200 to Duke a few weeks ago. Basically, ever since they lost to Middle Tennessee State back in September, Miami's basically given up, and it's disappointing. Do I think Southern Miss can cover? Southern Miss. Let me see what the line is there. I mean, I like Southern Miss. They've got a great running back, of course. Everybody knows who his dad is. It's Frank Gore. And as Gore goes, the offense goes for Southern Miss. Let's see. Southern Miss is playing UL Monroe. Oh, it's a short line there too, and it's a big game for Southern Miss because if they win, they'll get to 6-6. They'll be bowl eligible. They've lost 3 straight coming in, but they lost by 3 at Coastal. Then they lost at 7 at home to South Alabama. Those are 2 very good football teams. UL Monroe. Let's see. They're coming off an 18-point loss to Troy. Let's see what the numbers are. UL Monroe 108th in offense, 107th in defense. I think that Southern Miss, I see the line depending on where you go, is between 2.5 and 3.5. At FanDuel, it's 2.5. I think if they're a lot better than I like 3.5. And then, PointsBet and DraftKings and MGM and Caesars and everybody, they're all at 3. If you get it at 2.5, I definitely like it. At 3, it's a little dicier because, then you end up with a push if it's a field goal win. But I like Southern Miss more than I like them. Hey, John, good to see you. Will KC find a way to not cover again? Yeah, the line is 15.5. That's a tough one to say because it's such a big line. And you have to wonder, as Steen would say, will Kansas City play with their food too much and get complacent and then, just try to grind a clock? The only concern I have about that is, can the Rams score any points at all? And that's the big question. Yeah, IUPUI scores now. It's scary because, they didn't score against Chicago State or Drake in the first couple of games, so I thought they'd stay under again. And then, they had that game with Denver that went over, and then I think they went over again a couple of days ago. I would steer clear of that game too, T-Train. I would not mess with 15.5 points. Not in the NFL. In college, you can get away with it. Then here, after that, going through the shot in the dark there, we talked about Wake Forest, we talked about Pitt. We'll talk about Troy. We're talking about a team in the Sun Belt. Troy's played some very good football very quietly because nobody talks about Troy because they're like, oh, come on, Coastal Carolina's in the Sun Belt. And, so is App State, but nobody cares about App State because they're not very good this year. But, Troy, very, very good defensively, 9th in the nation in scoring defense, giving up just 16.6 points a game. Got a couple good quarterbacks in Watson and Doge there. And let's face it, Arkansas State, not very good. You look at the Red Wolves, they come in, they're 3-8. Butch Jones went from one bad situation to another. It doesn't get a whole lot better for him here. They have no run game to speak of. They average 92.7 yards a game on the ground, 2.9 yards a carry. Blackman can't do it all with his arm. Troy gets the win there rather convincingly. After that, we've got hockey game, New Jersey over Washington. Washington had a decent showing yesterday. New Jersey beat Buffalo on the road. The Devils have won 14 of 15. Capitals still can't figure out what's going on half the time. I don't trust Washington at this stage of the season. They've got to figure things out. And then in the NFL for tomorrow, to build on this, make it stretch it out a little bit, make it a little more entertaining. The Ravens over the Jaguars. This is a chance for Baltimore to make some hay because they beat Carolina last week. Carolina was 3-7. Their next 3 opponents coming up, going into this week, 3-7, 3-7, 3-7. If I'm the Ravens and I can't win these games to keep that lead in the AFC North, after this week you got the Broncos, you got the Steelers, and then you've got the Browns. Of course, Deshaun Watson will be back for Cleveland in that Browns game. But this is a chance for Baltimore to maybe extend that 1-game lead over the Bengals. I like them on the road against Jacksonville. Am I on the Mike White train? No. I don't like Mike. I mean, let's face it. Mike White is starting because the Jets don't know what to do right now after Zach Wilson said, no, it wasn't my fault that the offense sucked. I'm surprised they didn't go back to Flacco, actually. Seahawks over the Raiders. Here's a fun stat about the Raiders. Max Crosby has 9 sacks. The rest of the Raiders have a combined total of 3. Geno Smith and the Seahawks should be able to push around the Raiders, who have basically quit. And I like the Seahawks at home there. 49ers over the Saints. San Francisco's won 3 in a row. The Saints won last week, but they beat the Rams. Now they have to go on the road. I like San Francisco to prevail at home. I know 8.5 is a bit high, but San Francisco's looked very good since getting McCaffrey. Now you put him in there with Kittle and Samuel and Ayuk and the rest of those guys. There's just a lot of weapons. The Chargers over the Cardinals. Chargers have been disappointing. They've blown 2 games against Kansas City that they should have won. And that's why they're 5-5 instead of 7-3. You look at their losses, they lost to the Chiefs by 3 both times. They lost to the 49ers by 6. Their other losses were blowouts. They lost to Seattle by 14. They lost to Jacksonville 38-10 in that game where Herbert was put right after he broke the ribs in the first Kansas City game. Mike Williams won't play for the Chargers, but Arizona is a team that's gone nowhere fast. And they can't stop anybody. They just got stomped on Monday night. It's a short rest or a short game or a short week of rest, I should say, because they played Monday night. I like them there. And finally, the Commanders over the Falcons. Here's the thing. Atlanta likes to run the ball. Washington's good at stopping the run, which is weird because, the defensive line has really held up well for the Commanders this season. It's not something you would have expected, but Payne and the rest of those guys have done a good job against the ground game. They've given up. They're 6th in the league in yards per game allowed on the ground. You look at recent games, they gave up just 21 yards to Houston on the ground last week. They held the Eagles to 94, and they held the Vikings to 56. The only team to go over 100 yards in the last 5 against them was the Colts, who ran for 135 in that game where Ellinger started. Atlanta's going to have a tough time, and Heineke has thrown the ball fairly well for Washington, and we know how bad Atlanta's pass defense is. My favorite bet of the day, Reggie, is probably LSU over Texas A&M. I just can't trust Texas A&M to do anything at this point. And LSU's got a lot to play for. And after we saw how A&M struggled last week, can't put a ton of faith in them at this point. You have to wonder how full or how empty, for that matter, Kyle Field will be in College Station this afternoon. So that'll do it for today. Like you saw, we've got all through the 3-teamer in there. We threw a 4-teamer from the premiums in there, and we threw in the shot in the dark. Hopefully when we do this again, should be next week, we'll have figured out the technical glitches. That was my fault because I thought that it was going to cooperate similarly to what StreamYard did, and OBS has a lot of different things that it acted like it was going to connect, and then it said it wasn't connecting, and then it cut me off. So that's what we had to go back and shuffle stuff around. How bad is LSU definitely could use a blowout win here because everybody talks about how winning games, winning ugly is fine, but not when it comes to the rankings because they want to see teams blow up teams, 76-2. Because, that's why you see all those cupcake games on the schedules because, hey, look, we beat Pennsylvania A&I Tech State Community College U 58-0. that's just the way it works. I personally am not I think it's a matter of who you beat, but style points are a factor now. But yeah, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you comment. Throw in what you guys are talking about playing this week. Let everybody know that we're back. Tell your friends. Tell your neighbors. Tell your friends' neighbors. Let everybody know, and we will hopefully be back next week again. And hopefully we'll have figured out the technical difficulties. Like I said, that was my fault. I want to thank Michael for doing all that stuff. Even though we didn't get to show it up there, but we can get that figured out. Like I said, check out the premiums. Good deals going on right now with the fact that it's the holiday weekend. We put out some major discounts, so you can take advantage. You can get single picks. You can get picks by the month. You can get picks by the week. You can get picks by the year. You get picks by a sport. There you go, T-Tray. That works too. But yeah, check out all the expert picks. There's mine. There's Steen's. There's Dave Delano's. There's Mason's. Arthur. Everybody. Everybody that does them. They're all there. Make sure you check them out. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for dealing with the technical difficulties with me. For Just Parlays, I'm Chris King, and we will see you next week as we cover what's going on in the wide, wide world of sports to bring things to help you put some more money in your pockets and enjoy sports for what it is, making money. But no, seriously, have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you next time. So long.